Okay, these are our 1.1a notes. They are all about solving equations. So what you might want to do, I'm including the PDF of this. So if you want to jot these down in a notebook or on a piece of paper and try as many of the problems on the note page as you want, then you can come back and use this video as a filler to get the information on the ones that you struggled with. Or if you just want to follow along with our notes the entire time, that's okay too. All right, so problems 1 and 2, solve each equation. Problem 1, 3x minus 13 equals 11. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is add 13 to both sides. Remember, anytime we solve an equation, if we do one thing to one side, we have to do the same thing to the other side. So the 13 is going to cancel out. 3x equals 11 plus 13 makes 24. Then I need to get rid of the 3, so I'm going to divide by 3, which gets me x equals 8. And that's my final answer. My equation is solved. Okay, so for problem number 2, I see these parentheses here, which means I need to distribute. So I'm going to multiply the 6 and the 4. 6 times x is 6x. 6 times positive 1 is positive 6. Take a second and distribute that 4 for me. You should have gotten 4x plus 12. All right, now I have x's on each side, so I need to move them all to one side. I'm going to choose to move everything to the left-hand side. I'm going to subtract 4x. I could have also subtracted 6x if I wanted to. 6 minus 4 is 2x. Bring down the plus 6. Bring down the 12. Now that problem looks a lot like our problem number 1, so if you would, take a second and solve the rest of that problem out as best you can. Right, you should have solved that out to get an answer of x equals 3. Let's move on to problems 3 and 4. Take a moment, write them down in your notebook if you need. And then the first thing we're going to do on problem number 3 is distribute. I'll let you get started with that. Okay, so for problem number 3, I'm going to bring down the 5x plus 10. Distribute the 3 to get 3x plus 18. And notice this extra 3 on the outside here. It's not being affected by this 3 in front, so you don't need to distribute that. You're just going to need to bring it straight down to make plus 3. Then I have these two terms, which are just regular numbers on that side. I'm going to combine them. I don't have to do the opposite here. I just have to do what it says. Positive 18 plus 3 makes 21. And I'm going to drop everything else down. Then subtract the 3x from both sides. I'll give you guys a moment to finish that problem. Now, when I get to the end of this problem, I notice that I have 11 divided by 2. That does not give me a whole number. That's okay. I can write my answer either as 11 over 2 and just leave it as an improper fraction, or I can grab my calculator and divide 11 by 2 and get a decimal of 5.5. Either one of those are correct answers. Okay, problem number 4. This one's going to require us to use our calculator on our phone that we downloaded. So because our calculator does fractions, we can go ahead and type that in. So I'm going to set this up the same way I did before. I'm going to add the fraction 5/6 to both sides. cancel those. Bring down the 2/3 x, and then in your calculator, type it in as 1 divided by 2 plus 5 divided by 6. It's going to get you a decimal, which you will then use the math button, hit enter, and it'll convert it into a fraction for you, back into a fraction for you. Within a problem, it's good not to have fractions and decimals. So we're going to change everything back into fractions here. So when you change that into a fraction, you end up getting 4/3. 1/2 plus 5/6 gets you a decimal. Change it back into a fraction using your calculator, math, enter. And at the end here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal of 2/3, which is 3/2. Same thing on this side. Remember, whatever we do to one side, we must do to the other. And the reason I do that over here is because the 3's cancel and the 2's cancel, and I'm just left with x. So if you notice over here on the right-hand side, there's a couple different ways you could do this. You could just multiply the numerators. 4 times 3 across the top is 12. And then across the bottom, 3 times 2 is 6. And you could divide that out to get 2. Or if you notice that things cancel over here, you could cancel out those 3's and leave it as 4/2, which again gets you 2. Or you can even reduce it. 2 and 4 have a common number of 2, so I'm going to divide each of those by 2, and then get 2/1, which again still gets you back to that answer of x equals 2. Either way you do it is perfectly fine. I know everybody's learned it a little bit differently, so however you feel comfortable is best. All right, great work so far. Let's keep moving. So on this next part, we have some story problems. If you just want to write out the work, that's okay. If you would like to copy the entire story problem down, you can reference those notes that I attached, or you can just pause the video and kind of write some things out. We'll get started with problem number 5. The chess club is printing books to raise money. The print shop charges $5 for each book, B, and a one-time fee of $25 for publishing. Write an equation to represent the printing cost, C. So what I notice here is that the directions are just asking me to write an equation. They're not actually asking me to solve anything. So I'm going to write C equals, that's the printing cost. And then I have to think about what I need to pay for. Well, I have to pay $5 for each book. So every time I have a book, I have to pay $5. So I'm going to represent that using 5B. Then I also have to pay a one-time fee of $25. So because it's a one-time fee, I just need to write the 25 without any additional variables next to it. And that's it. That's my equation. And so then if you wanted to print 7 books, you plug in a 7 for the B, and you can get your printing cost. All right, problem number 6. Christian earns $7 an hour working at McDonald's. He is saving to buy a video game that costs $135. If Christian already has $65 saved, how many more hours must he work in order to buy the game? This one does not ask me to write an equation, so if you don't want to write an equation, you don't have to. The last one specifically asked me for an equation, so it's always make sure you follow the directions. This one's just asking for an answer. So if you want to grab your calculator and just logically think through this problem, solve it out, and get an answer, that's completely fine. I'm going to go ahead and write an equation just in case. My equation is going to be 7H, $7 for each hour, plus he already has $65 saved. So the 7H is the money he's going to get. The 65 is the money he already has, and he needs that to total $135 for his video game. Take a moment, and if you haven't already solved it using your calculator one way, you can go ahead and solve this equation to get an answer for the number of hours Christian needs to work. I'll give you just a moment. Right. So I solved for h and I got 10. Because this is a story problem, feel free to label it if you want. Christian has to work for 10 more hours. And again, you could have gotten that by just thinking, okay, well, $135 minus the 65 he already has, we got you 70, and then you just divide it out by 7. That's fine too. So the equation is not necessary on this problem, as long as you got to a final answer of 10 hours. All right, great work. Let's keep moving. 2 more story problems here. Again, if you need to, you can pause the video and jot a couple of these things down. Or if you'd rather just write down your work, that's fine too. Your local bookstore offers a membership that costs $30 per year. Members get books for $10 and non-members get books for $15. So let me just think about what that means. I have to pay for the membership, $30, but I get a discount every time I buy a book. If you plan to buy 8 books this year, should you become a member? Justify your answer. Anytime it asks you to justify your answer, it just means explain why you answered the way you did. So this question is just asking for a yes or no. Should you become a member? Yes or no? Don't just write yes or no. Make sure that you have some math or something written so that way you can explain why you chose yes or no. So I'm going to set this one up as just a comparison. A member versus a non-member. I'm just going to think about how much somebody has to pay if they are a member and a non-member. So in order to be a member, you have to pay the $30. That's $30 out of your pocket right away. But you get a discount on books, so you're only paying $10 for each book. I'll call books B. For the non-member, you don't have to pay that $30 charge, but you are paying $15 per book. So if you only buy one book, you can see it's obvious that you want to be a non-member because you're just paying the $15. If you bought one book and were a member, you would have to pay the $30 plus $10 for the book. That's quite a lot, $40. So let's use our 8, plug it into our B's, and see what happens. Why don't you guys take a second, plug in 8 for both B's, and see what numbers you get for each. Okay, so 30 plus 80 is 110. 15 times 8 is 120. So would you rather pay $110 or $120? Well, obviously you're going to want to pay $110. You're saving $10. So should you become a member? Yes. You can either leave it like that, and I can see that work, or you can say, yes, you save $10 by being a member. Again, as long as you've shown some sort of mathematical work to prove your answer, you're good. Okay, our last problem. You're working on a project in art. You have a piece of ribbon that is 72 inches long. You need to cut the ribbon so that one piece is 6 inches longer than the other piece. How long should each piece be? So we have our friend Dylan here. He actually worked out the problem, and we're trying to figure out whether he did it correctly. Dylan solved the problem below. 72 divided by 2 equals 36. So each piece needs to be 36, he thought. But then they have to be 6 inches longer than the other. So he added 6 and subtracted 6. He got answers of 42 and 30. Is he correct? Justify your answer. So take a minute and think about that. See if it meets the criteria. Is those 2 pieces of ribbon 72 inches total? Are those 2 pieces of ribbon, is one 6 inches longer than the other? So I'm going to check. I'm going to take the two numbers that Dylan thinks. I'm going to add them together to make sure they make 72. So 42 plus 30, yes, that is 72 inches long. So he's good on that aspect. But then my other stipulation says the two ribbons have to be 6 inches. One has to be 6 inches longer than the other. So if I want to compare those, I think about 42 and 30, and I can subtract those to see if those give me 6. Well, these don't. These actually give me 12. So these are 12 inches. One is 12 inches longer than the other. So that's not correct. So your question says, is he correct? No. And you can say something like, the lengths of the strings are not 6 inches apart. Or something like, no, these strings are 12 inches apart. It doesn't actually ask you to find the correct answer, but if you want to, you can try to figure out what Dylan did wrong. The 36 part was pretty good, but it has to do something with what he did on this next piece when he added 6 and subtracted 6. When he added 6 and subtracted 6, the numbers became 12 inches apart. So can you think of what he would need to add and subtract to make them 6 inches apart? Yeah, it's going to have to be 3 instead. So Dylan should have done 36 plus 3 and 36 minus 3. That would have given him 39 and 33. Those two numbers still add up to 72, but now they're only 6 inches apart. So those would have been Dylan's correct answers. All right, really nice job on today's notes. If you have any questions, jot them down, star the ones you need help with. Send me an email if you need. Great job. I'll see you soon.